My neighbor installed a camera pointed straight at my kids' play area. I asked him to adjust it. He said, "Public view. Learn the law."
So, I learned the law.
And I filed a notice. What happened next got him a visit from someone in a suit. This started about 4 months ago, and I'm still mad when I think about it. We live in a regular suburban neighborhood outside of Kansas City. Quiet street, fenced yards, nothing fancy. I've got 2 kids, 5 and 7. Our backyard isn't huge, but it has a swing set, a little play kitchen, and one of those soft turf mats so the kids don't hurt themselves if they fall. They play there every day after school. One day, I was out there cleaning up after a storm, just picking up leaves and wiping off their stuff, when I noticed something strange sticking up over the fence from the neighbor's yard. It looked like a security camera. Small, round, with a little red light blinking. At first, I thought maybe it was pointed toward their driveway or something. Then I looked closer. The thing was pointed directly into our yard. Not just at the back fence or our door. At the kids' play area. Their swing set. Their sandbox. Where they sit and talk and laugh and do dumb little things kids do when they think no one's watching. I stared at it for a while. I even waved my hand and saw the lens slightly adjust. It had motion tracking. That night, after the kids went to bed, I went next door. I figured I'd keep it civil. The guy's name is Mike. Retired military. Single. Keeps to himself, mostly. He was out back with a beer, scrolling through his phone. I said, "Hey Mike, sorry to bug you. I noticed your camera. It looks like it's pointing right into our backyard. At the kids' stuff." He didn't even look up. Just said, "Yeah, it's for my security." I nodded. "Right, I get that. Just it's picking up a lot of footage of my kids. I was wondering if you'd be willing to angle it a bit away. Just so it's not directly at the swing set." That's when he looked at me. Real calm.
Took a sip of his drink. "Public view," he said.
"You should learn the law." And that was it. He turned back to his phone. I stood there for a second. My ears were burning. I didn't say anything else. Just walked back home. Now, I'm not the kind of person who runs to the police over every little thing. I really tried to give him a chance. But something about how he said it, how confident he was, made me feel sick.
So I did learn the law.
I stayed up late that night. I looked up state laws, city codes. I posted questions on legal forums. I called a friend of mine who works in real estate and asked about reasonable expectation of privacy in backyards. Turns out, he was full of crap. Even if something is technically visible from public space, it doesn't mean people can record 24/7. Especially not aimed directly at a space meant for children. The courts are clear. Kids have an expectation of privacy in their own yard. And if you record children without consent, that's a whole different legal issue. Especially if you're saving or streaming the footage. So, I typed everything up. I included the laws. I included a photo of the camera from our yard, with my kid's swing set clearly in frame. I wrote out that I was requesting him to adjust or remove the camera within 7 days. If not, I'd report it formally. Then I printed the whole thing, put it in an envelope, slid it under his door. No response. 3 days later, I noticed a black car pull up in front of his house. A guy got out in a dark suit with a small briefcase. He looked like a lawyer, but could have been city enforcement. I never got the full answer. He stood at Mike's door for a while. Mike didn't answer. Then later that day, another guy came. This one wore khakis and a badge on his belt. He walked around Mike's yard for a while. I stayed inside, but I watched. About an hour after they left, I noticed the camera was gone. Just gone. Not moved. Not repositioned. Removed. I didn't say anything.
Didn't need to.
That was 3 weeks ago.
He hasn't spoken to me since.
But he definitely knows I wasn't messing around. I thought that was it. Honestly, I figured he'd just be embarrassed and keep to himself. But about a week later, things started to feel weird. It started small. One morning, my trash bins were tipped over. Not just knocked down, emptied. Trash everywhere. Looked like someone did it on purpose. I figured it could have been raccoons or wind. I cleaned it up. Next day, I found a thin scratch on the back window of my car. Just one, maybe from a tree branch, maybe not. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then my oldest son came in crying one afternoon. Said someone yelled at him from the other side of the fence. I got down on one knee. What did they say? He sniffled. They said, "Your mom thinks she's smart, but she's gonna get what's coming." My stomach dropped. I went out to the backyard. Stood by the fence. "Mike," I shouted. Nothing. I called the police. Not to press charges yet, but just to make a record of it. They came out, wrote a report. Told me they couldn't prove who said what, but they'd keep an eye. 2 nights later, around 2 a.m., I heard a loud pop. I got up, looked out the window, and saw that one of our porch lights had been shattered. Just one.
Clean break.
Nothing stolen. Nothing touched. At that point, I knew it wasn't random. I went to the hardware store the next morning and bought a motion-activated floodlight and my own set of cameras. Not cheap ones, either. High resolution. Infrared cloud storage. I mounted them myself, one in the front, one in the back, and one aimed directly at the fence line. And this time, I made sure he saw me doing it. That night, I caught him standing in his yard. Just standing there, arms crossed, staring at our house. I walked out with the trash and said, "Everything all right?" He didn't answer. Just turned around and went back inside. That weekend, a letter showed up in my mailbox. No stamp, no name. Just typed words. Harassment goes both ways. That's all it said. I reported it to the police again. They made a note. I kept the letter in a folder with all the other stuff, photos, dates, even recordings. I wasn't going to let this get brushed off. The next Monday, I got a call from a private number. They didn't say who they were. Just said, "If you keep pushing, people might start pushing back." I recorded that, too. So I took everything, every photo, video clip, note, letter, and sent it to a lawyer. Not a high-end one, just someone recommended by a friend who deals with property disputes. She looked it over and said something I'll never forget. "You've got enough to scare him. Maybe more than that." She helped me draft a formal cease and desist, with language about surveillance, verbal threats, property damage, and emotional distress. It was solid. Legal. Serious. We sent it certified mail. The day he signed for it, something changed again. Not with him, but with me. Because now I wasn't afraid of him. Now he had something to lose. For a couple of days after he got the letter, it was quiet.
Too quiet.
No trash dumped, no broken lights, no weird phone calls. I thought maybe the lawyer's letter finally scared him into backing off. I started to relax. Let the kids play outside again. Started sleeping through the night. Then a city code enforcement truck pulled into my driveway. The officer knocked. Nice guy, maybe mid-40s. Asked if he could take a look at our backyard cameras and floodlights. Said there'd been a noise complaint and a report of excessive lighting, possibly violating local ordinance. I invited him in. Showed him the setup. He looked around, then said, "This doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary, but we still have to log it." I asked who filed the complaint. He shook his head. But I already knew. Next day, someone from Child Protective Services showed up. I don't even know how to explain what that felt like. My heart just stopped. A woman in a black windbreaker stood on my porch and said she'd received a report of possible neglect. She was calm, professional, said she wasn't accusing us of anything, just needed to follow up. She asked to see the kids, to look around the house. I let her. What choice did I have? She walked through the kitchen, the bedrooms, checked the fridge, asked me a bunch of questions. Did the kids go to school? Did they have medical care? Had I ever left them unsupervised? After about 45 minutes, she closed her folder and said, "Everything looks fine here. These complaints, they're sometimes made in bad faith. Happens more than you'd think." I nodded, but my hands were shaking. After she left, I locked every door. I didn't say anything to the kids. I didn't want them to know. That night, I checked our camera footage from the past few days. And I saw something. At 3:14 a.m., 2 nights earlier, someone had walked up to our mailbox. Hoodie pulled tight, face down. They slid something inside. I zoomed in and paused the video. It was a thick envelope. I checked the mail that morning and didn't see anything, which meant someone had probably taken it out before we ever saw it. Possibly the same person who put it there. I downloaded the footage. I sent it to my lawyer. She called me the next day. Okay, she said. Now we go further. She filed a restraining order. Not just for me, but on behalf of my kids too. She also filed a civil harassment complaint. She advised me to get a P.O. box for all mail moving forward. But here's the thing. The more we pushed legally, the more it seemed to unnerve him. And he started making mistakes. One of our cameras picked up a moment, just a second, of him in his side yard with a long pole. It had something shiny at the top. My lawyer thought it might be a small camera or a microphone. We couldn't prove what it was, but we got it on video. And with that, my lawyer made one more call. To someone who, she said, would make this official. The next Thursday morning, a different kind of visitor showed up. This time it wasn't city code. It wasn't police. It wasn't CPS. It was a man in a plain navy suit with a badge clipped to his belt and a file folder under his arm. He knocked on Mike's door. Mike opened it, barely. They talked for about 3 minutes. Then the man asked to step inside. Mike said no. So the man handed him a document and walked away. Mike just stood there, staring down at it. Didn't move for almost a full minute. I don't know what was in that folder. Not exactly. But I have a guess. Because later that night, for the first time since this whole thing started, his house went dark. No porch light. No glow from the backyard. Nothing. And the next morning, he was gone. The truck was gone. The camera mount on the fence had been removed completely. Curtains pulled. His mail piled up for days. But I wasn't about to assume it was over. He was gone for nearly 2 weeks. No one knew where he went. I asked one of the other neighbors casually, just to see if they'd heard anything. She said, he probably went to stay with his brother or something. That guy always struck me as off.
But I didn't buy that.
Not after everything he'd pulled. I had this feeling like maybe he wasn't just taking a break. Maybe he was hiding. Maybe he knew something was coming. Then, out of nowhere, he came back. I saw his truck roll into the driveway early one morning. I was in the kitchen making lunches for the kids, and I watched it crawl up like nothing had happened. He got out, slower than usual.
No swagger. No glare.
But that same day, a white government vehicle, unmarked, showed up about 2 hours later. 2 people got out. They didn't knock on my door. They walked straight to his. One was carrying a laptop. The other had a file box. They stayed for almost an hour. I don't know what they talked about.
I don't know what was in that file.
But after they left, I saw Mike sitting on his back porch. Just sitting.
No ver.
No phone. Just staring at the fence. He looked like a man who knew something was over. That weekend, I took the kids to my sister's house. Not because I thought he'd do anything, but because I didn't want to be home anymore. Not while this thing felt like it was still twisting in the air. When we came back Sunday night, there was a new camera on his house, pointed at his own driveway. Only his driveway. And on our side, a small piece of cardboard taped to the shared fence. It just said, I got the message. No name. No apology. Nothing else. I took it down and burned it in the fire pit. But I kept the footage. I kept every letter, every report, every file. Because people like that don't stop. They just wait for you to forget what they're capable of. 2 weeks passed. Things got quiet again. Too quiet. No signs of him acting out. No more trash disturbances. No strange people at our door. For a minute, I let myself believe it was actually over. That maybe whatever was in that government file, or whoever those people were, had finally shut it down. Then I got a call from my lawyer. She said, "You're not going to like this." Turns out, someone had filed a countercomplaint. Not against me, but against the cameras on my house. Claimed they were intrusive. Claimed they invaded his privacy.
My lawyer sighed.
He's trying to flip the narrative. I told her I hadn't moved the cameras. That they'd been in the same place for months, and were only aimed at my property. She already knew. She had the photos and footage to prove it.
Still, we had to respond.
File a statement. Resubmit the original timeline of events. It felt like the whole thing was starting again. Only now it was messier. Because the complaint wasn't filed with the city.
It was with a small civil court downtown, which meant he got to show up and speak.
And so did I. We were both called in for a preliminary hearing. When I walked into that courthouse and saw him sitting there across the room, I felt my throat tighten. He looked calm. Not smug. Not angry. Just quiet. Like a man waiting for something to go his way. The judge was polite, but tired-looking. She glanced through the file, asked a few questions. Most of the time, she just nodded while reading. Then Mike said something I hadn't expected. He said, "She started all of this. I was just protecting my own property. And now I'm the one being treated like a criminal." That hit me hard. Because the way he said it, it almost sounded like he believed it. Like he had twisted the whole story in his head so deeply that he'd convinced himself he was the victim. My lawyer jumped in. She laid out everything. The footage. The threats. The CPS call. The property damage. The midnight envelope drop. The man in the suit. She didn't raise her voice once. The judge said she needed time to review it all. We were told to wait for a decision by mail. When we left the courtroom, Mike didn't even look at me. He just walked out the side door like he couldn't get away fast enough. But that's when I saw someone else. A man standing by the vending machines in the hallway. Same man I'd seen outside his house weeks earlier. The one in the plain suit, holding the folder. Only this time he was watching me. We locked eyes. He didn't smile. Didn't nod. Just stood there, expression flat. Then he turned and walked away. And I realized something I hadn't thought about before. Maybe Mike wasn't just acting alone. A week after the court date, I got the envelope. The judge dismissed Mike's complaint. Said there was no evidence my cameras violated anything. Said his claims didn't hold up. My lawyer called it a small win. I called it a breather. But something still didn't sit right. That man in the hallway, the one with the badge and the folder, he stayed in my head. Not because he did anything, but because he didn't.
He didn't speak.
Didn't explain why he was there. And no one ever mentioned him again. One night I sat down and went through every piece of paperwork we'd collected. Every report, every video still, every file. I kept stopping on the ones that mentioned unidentified third-party observations. There were notes. Little things I hadn't seen before. A log from a city worker mentioning a prior surveillance investigation involving my neighbor from over a year ago. A CPS report that had a section blacked out. My lawyer said sometimes that happens when unrelated history is involved. But I couldn't stop wondering. Unrelated to who? I asked her if there was any way to find out more. She said quietly, "You might not want to." Mike hasn't spoken to me since. The camera never came back. His porch stays dark. He drives slower now.
Keeps his head down.
But sometimes late at night, I see the glow of his TV flicker through the blinds. And every once in a while, I catch a shadow standing in the window, just watching. And sometimes I wonder if the real problem wasn't the camera. It was what he thought he was allowed to watch. Sometimes I still walk past that fence and wonder how long he was watching before I noticed. And I think the part that stays with me the most isn't what he did. It's how easy it was for him to do it, and how long I tried to be polite about it. And T Gold, 90s Mania.